All right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We're here again with another Red Clover interview. This is Maria, and today I'm here with Farhan Khalid. And this is Red Clover, which is the digital library for online value-based and diverse children's literature. And Farhan today is going to be talking about his various works, but in particular, the work that we have on our site is Bilal and the Big Bully, which is a faith-based book about teaching courtesy, respect, and perspective when facing a bully. Farhan has also a lot of other works, Wali's World Tour and A Tale of Two Cookies, which if you're interested in and you've read Bilal and the Big Bully, you should totally check them out. So thank you, Farhan, for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me on.
Yeah, could you just like introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself and
Sure.
what you're interested in?
Sure, exactly. Yeah, so and during the daytime I work full time in a corporate environment, so nothing too exciting, just
Yeah.
nothing too exciting, just kind of an office job. But then, and then the evenings I'm a husband and a father, so we have a 16-month-old. And then I moonlight as a writer, so I've always liked writing. I found it as a way where I can kind of just creatively communicate my ideas, and I am an introvert, so I like being able to kind of think my thoughts through before actually sharing them with everyone. So writing was just always a good way for me to get my ideas and thoughts out. So I used to just kind of write like articles, shorter pieces, and eventually I just had the spark where I wanted to write a book. So I finally did complete that goal of writing a book, but that my first book was a nonfiction that was more focused around personal finances and investing. And then what happened is somebody in my Toastmasters club, if you're not familiar with that, it's a club for public speaking and leadership. So
Okay.
I'm in a Toastmasters club, and one of the people in there who knew about my other writing, he said, "Why don't you write a children's book?" So I kind of thought about it. I took it as a challenge. I never really seriously thought about writing nonfiction. I'm sorry, fiction, and never really thought about writing children's fiction in particular. But I went home, I thought about it, and within a week, I actually had a rough draft down. So I kind of feel like it was meant to be. It worked out okay. And yeah, that's how I kind of got, all the way here to Red Clover is a kind of this challenge from someone, and I took it to heart and just made it happen.
Wow, that's a really cool story. That's interesting. So I know, like I mentioned at the beginning, you have a lot of various works, and then you also have nonfiction as well, which is really interesting. Is there a book today in particular that you want to discuss?
Yes, I do. So I wanted to discuss my book, Bilal and the Big Bully. So I
Okay.
wrote this about a year and a half ago. And this is a book where there's a boy named Bilal who moves to a new town and he starts at a new school. And it turns out that there's a bully at the school named Wali Wannabite. And Wali likes to eat a bite of other kids' lunches. So this is an issue that the main character Bilal has to deal with. And what happens is, where I bring kind of the faith and diversity into it, is the month of Ramadan starts. This is the month of fasting in the Muslim faith. And now that Bilal's getting a little older, he decides he wants to fast. So he's going to fast, but that means he won't have a lunch. So he tries to kind of decide, "Well, how am I going to deal with this bully?" So he kind of brings some extra food with him, and then he decides to, share some of the food with the bully, but then also kind of challenge him, "Why don't you skip lunch?" And this kind of, leads to the bully actually taking on the challenge, and eventually by the end of the story, the bully completely turns around and is no longer a bully.
Yeah, it's a really cool story. It has a lot of different aspects to it, and it's a very interesting story. Unlike most children's books I've read, it was a very interesting story, and I was
Thanks.
very engaged in it while I read it, which I'm not even a child, so it's a really good book. But yeah, so can you tell us a little bit behind the inspiration for Bilal and the Big Bully?
Sure, yeah. So when I wrote it, I didn't want to write just a fun story. I did try to make it a fun story, but I said I wanted to write something that could make a difference. And bullying is unfortunately one of those things that's been around forever, but it's something that needs to continue being addressed. It's not like a problem that's going to be solved and we're done with it. With each new generation, it's just something that's going to continue happening. And I don't think sometimes people might not realize the long lasting impacts that bullying can have on someone. I mean, their self esteem can be damaged, and this could affect them for the rest of their lives. And in the short term, they could have difficulty sleeping, they could have difficulty eating, anxiety. They might try to skip school, which is going to hurt them academically. And again, that can have a downstream impact of hurting them later when it comes to college or career. So I did just want to write something that could make a difference, and I wanted to kind of be able to talk to parents and to teachers and kids, kind of the whole spectrum there. And by that I mean I wanted to help parents recognize bullying, because sometimes it's easy to recognize when it's directed at a person and it's physical, but there's also subtler forms of bullying like ostracizing and spreading rumors. So I just wanted to make sure parents recognize that, they talk to their kids about it, and then encourage their kids to actually speak up, because if it is scary to speak up, but if they don't, it's just going to continue happening. So kind of overcoming that hurdle, and even if they're not experiencing bullying themselves, if they see it happening to others, just to have the courage to speak up and get help, because we adults are here to help, and it doesn't have to be a parent, it could be a teacher or a coach, but they've just got to speak up.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So kind of going along with that inspiration behind it, tell me a little bit about the main characters in the story, not just Bilal, but also Wali Wannabe, and like just the whole inspiration and behind those characters, those main characters.
Sure. Yeah, so there aren't a ton of characters in the book. I kind of kept it simple. So Bilal's the main kid, and he makes a friend at school, Timmy, and then he sees this other girl being, that was kind of his first experience with the bully, seeing the bully take this other girl's lunch. And that's kind of where the interaction with the bully started, because eventually the bully was going to come around to them. So he was kind of prepared for that. The bully's relatively big, like twice as big as the other kids. So he kind of brought him in there. And then it's Bilal's mom is also mentioned in the story, just kind of a smaller role. But once Bilal actually experiences the bullying, then she is encouraging him to like speak up about it and to tell her what happened, etc.
Yeah. So kind of going back to you and your backstory, when did you start writing? When did you realize it was something you were really passionate about?
Sure. I mean, I've been writing for a long time, and just thinking back to like even undergrad, I wrote a little bit for the school newspaper, and then just over the years, just kind of writing articles that I would post, either like on a blog or like on my LinkedIn account. I did some freelancing for Autoblog because I'm interested in cars. And then eventually I was just thinking, I really want to write a book. And I didn't know if I could do it, because it seemed a little overwhelming, putting together, 100, 150,
Yeah,
200 pages
definitely.
of content.
Yes.
So I picked a topic that I was interested in, and where kind of similar to the children's book, where I wanted it to be something that was important that could make a difference. And in this example, it was being able to teach financial literacy. So just kind of letting people know, how to invest, what is investing, how to manage their money, etc. So I started writing. It all kind of just started to come together, where I had all this content. I was organizing it into chapters, and it turned out to be, roughly like 150, 160 pages. So I was kind of surprised I could do it, but it was just a good experience, just going through the whole, end-to-end process of actually writing and self-publishing a book.
Yeah. So I know you kind of talked about this a little bit already, but with your family and everything. But what do you do in your free time when you're not writing? Or I know you have a corporate job, so when you're not doing that, you probably don't have much free time. But is there anything in particular that you
Yeah,
enjoy?
sure. So I mentioned cars. I am into cars, so I'll kind of keep up with car news and watch car videos. But I also, the big adventure, well, in my life now is just having a child. So my wife and I had our first child almost a year and a half ago, so 16 months ago, and just being able to play with my son and spend time with him and just watch his development. Just it's fascinating, and of course, just
Yes.
fun being able to just play with him. And aside from that, I'll play video games once in a while. I do try to exercise somewhat regularly, but yeah. So work, family, and play.
Yeah, that'll keep you busy. um, yeah, so going along with your books, not just Bilal and the Big Bully, but all your other literature that you have, who is your ideal reader, would you say?
Yep. So for this book in particular, Bilal and the Big Bully, it's roughly like kids aged 8 to 12. I think they can kind of relate to the characters in the story, and of course like kids can be mean at that age. When they're a little younger, like preschool, I mean they can be mean, but it's not really like with the same intention. And then Wali's World Tour, this is the second children's book I wrote. This is more of like fictional nonfiction, if that makes sense. So it's a fictional story, but I wanted it to be like a creative way to teach geography. And then A Tale of Two Cookies is the third and last children's book that I wrote. And this is a rhyming book. This was more intended for toddlers. So, and anywhere from like, 2 months to, 5 years of age, maybe I would hope they would enjoy it. And this is kind of more intended where the parent would read to the child. But hopefully once the child starts reading, they can also pick up on some of those words and read it.
Yeah, definitely. So something for all ages, kind of.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so if someone was picked up Bilal and the Big Bully, or they were browsing Amazon and they found it and they were considering reading it, what is your pitch that you would give them to say, hey, read that book, open it and look inside?
Yeah, well, basically, I guess the one sentence pitch would be, find out how Bilal dealt with this bully who wants to eat other kids' lunches. Did
Yeah.
he did he use his karate skills, or did he use a more creative way to deal with the bully?
Yeah, that's a good one. Um, and then, so what tips would you like to leave kids and parents in literature in general, and just in parenting and overcoming things such as
Mhm.
bullying or issues that happen in childhood development?
Sure. Yeah, and in general, just try to take things in stride and to learn from experiences. In particular, when it comes to bullying, again, learn how to identify it. So like I said, the direct bullying, the physical bullying, that is pretty easy, but to be aware of the other forms of bullying, like ostracizing and spreading rumors, especially with cyberbullying nowadays, with social media. It's just so easy to post, whether true or false, just to post a rumor about someone, or just make fun of someone online, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat. So kind of be aware of those things and to talk to your kids. Try to build that type of relationship where they're actually willing and not afraid to open up to you and actually explain what's going on in school, because it can be embarrassing, it can be scary. So sometimes it's hard to talk about these things. But the earlier that parents can start to build this type of open relationship where the kids will communicate with them, the better it'll be. Because once they get to the teen years, then it's going to be harder then to change them. And then for kids, I would say just try to have the courage to speak up, whether you're experiencing the bullying yourself or you see it happening to others. It's just it's going to have these long-term impacts on them if it's not addressed, and if it's not addressed, it's just going to keep happening. So either tell a parent, tell a teacher, tell a coach, but you've just got to have the courage to speak up.
Yeah, definitely. So that's some great advice. So I think that wraps up our interview for today, but thank you so much for talking to us and letting us interview you and get your input and your background. And so just to wrap up, this is Farhan Khalid with his book, Bilal and the Big Bully, which you should definitely check out on our website, Red Clover Reader. It's free if you sign up. And yeah, this is Maria. So thank you so much for joining us today, Farhan.
Yep, thanks a lot.
Yes, thank you so much, and thank you for watching, everybody.